Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earthship New Horizon and watched the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. The station looked like a giant crystal flower floating in the darkness of space, its many arms reaching out in perfect geometric patterns. This was the home of the Galactic Council, the group that ruled most of the known galaxy. Jake had been here many times before, and each visit ended the same way. Lieutenant Amy Patterson sat at her communication station, her fingers dancing over the controls as she received another message from the station. She looked up at Jake with tired eyes and shook her head. "They are saying the same thing again, Commander. Earth is not ready for full membership in the Council. They want us to wait another 50 years before we can apply again." Jake felt his jaw tighten, but kept his face calm. For 300 years, humanity had been trying to join the galactic community as equals. For 300 years, they had been treated like children who needed to grow up before they could sit at the adult table. The worst part was that everyone in the galaxy seemed to think this was funny. Dr. Richard Kane walked up to them, carrying a datapad filled with reports from their latest diplomatic mission. He was a thin man with gray hair who had spent most of his life studying alien cultures. "The Zephyrians told me yesterday that humans are cute pets who learn to build spaceships," he said with disgust in his voice. "The Vortex said we are too emotional to make good decisions. The Krillians think we are weak because we do not have shells or claws like they do." Amy turned back to her station as another message came in. "The Nereids are being polite as always, but they also voted against us. They say we polluted our own planet, so we cannot be trusted with other worlds." Jake walked to the big window at the front of the bridge and looked out at the station. Thousands of ships from dozens of different species moved around it like busy insects. There were the glowing energy ships of the Zephyrians, the crystal vessels of the Vortex, the dark metal warships of the Krillians, and the flowing water-like craft of the Nereids. All of them belonged to species that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, while humans were still learning to make fire. Captain Lisa Harper entered the bridge, her boots clicking on the metal floor. She was a veteran of 20 years of first contact missions, and had probably been rejected by more alien species than any other human alive. "Let me guess," she said, looking at the sad faces around her. "They said no again." "They did not even look at our proposals this time," Richard said, holding up his datapad. "We offered to share our medical knowledge, our art, our music, our ways of solving problems. They acted like we were trying to sell them rocks we found on the ground." Lisa nodded and walked over to stand next to Jake at the window. "You know what the real problem is. They do not think we have anything worth having. To them, we are just smart animals who got lucky and found a way to leave our planet." Amy suddenly sat up straight at her station. "Commander, I am picking up some strange signals from the outer edge of the system. They sound like distress calls, but they are very weak and broken up." Jake and Lisa exchanged glances. "Put them on the main speakers," Jake ordered. The bridge filled with crackling static, and then a voice came through, speaking in a language none of them recognized. The voice sounded scared and desperate, calling for help again and again before the signal cut out. "Where is that coming from?" Lisa asked. Amy worked at her controls for a few moments. "It is coming from the Kepler region, about 3 days' travel from here. But Commander, that area is marked as empty space on all the Council maps." Richard looked up from his datapad. "I checked with the Council about investigating distress calls in that region last month. They told me it was not worth the time or resources. They said anything out there was probably just old equipment breaking down." Jake stared out at the stars and made a decision that would change everything. Instead of returning to Earth with another failure, instead of waiting another 50 years to be rejected again, he would do what humans did best. He would go where others were afraid to go, and help whoever needed help. Amy, set course for the Kepler region. Best speed, sir? Amy looked confused. But we are supposed to return to Earth and report on the council meeting. The council meeting is over, Jake said firmly. They made it clear they do not want us, so we will go where we are needed. Someone out there is calling for help, and no one else cares enough to answer. Lisa smiled for the first time in days. Now that sounds like a human thing to do. As the New Horizon turned away from the council station and jumped into faster-than-light travel, none of them knew they were heading toward a discovery that would make the galaxy realize just how wrong they had been about humanity. The species they thought was a joke was about to become their only hope for survival. 3 months had passed since the New Horizon first detected the strange signals from the Kepler region. What they found there changed everything humans thought they knew about the galaxy. Commander Jake Morrison stood in the main conference room aboard the Earth battleship Defender, looking at holographic images that made his blood run cold. Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez pointed at the display, showing the remains of what used to be a solar system. This was the Zarian colony 3 weeks ago, he said, his voice shaking slightly. 5 planets, 2 space stations, and about 12 million people. Now there is nothing but empty space and some scattered atoms. Dr. Richard Kane studied the data with growing horror. The energy readings do not make sense. Whatever did this did not just destroy the planets. It broke them down at the molecular level and absorbed all the matter. It is like they were never there at all. The images showed the aftermath of encounters with something the humans had started calling the Devourers. These creatures came from the dark space between galaxies, ancient beings that had been sleeping for millions of years until something woke them up. They did not communicate, did not negotiate, and showed no mercy. They simply consumed everything in their path. Lieutenant Amy Patterson, now serving as communications chief for the human fleet, received a priority message from Earth Command. Admiral Brooks wants to know if we have learned anything new about their technology. She reported. Jake shook his head grimly. Tell him we know they are impossible to fight using normal methods. Their ships can pass through solid matter like it does not exist. Their weapons erase targets from reality itself. They can turn a star into a bomb and throw it at their enemies. The first time the galaxy's advanced civilizations encountered the Devourers, they tried their usual approaches. The Zephyrians, beings of pure energy who could communicate with their minds, attempted to make contact. The Devourers scattered their consciousness across space like dust in the wind. The Vortics deployed their most advanced artificial intelligence systems, machines that could calculate millions of possibilities in seconds. The machines simply shut down when faced with Devourer technology. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Adams entered the conference room, still wearing his battle armor from the latest skirmish. His unit had just returned from trying to help defend a Krillian colony world. The bugs threw everything they had at the Devourers, he reported. 1,000 of their best warships, weapons that could crack moons in half. The Devourers cut through them like they were made of paper. Tony brought up tactical displays from recent battles. Look at this pattern. Every species in the galaxy fights the same basic way. They use their best technology, follow logical strategies, and try to find the most efficient solution to problems. The Devourers seem designed to counter exactly that kind of thinking. Dr. Patricia Lewis, the fleet's chief scientist, had been studying wreckage from Devourer ships that humans managed to damage in their desperate fights. I think I understand what is happening, she said, pulling up her research data. The Devourers have been fighting advanced civilizations for millions of years. Their technology learns and adapts to counter logical, predictable responses. Jake leaned forward with interest. What do you mean? Every species in the galaxy thinks the same way, Patricia explained. They analyze a problem, find the optimal solution, and execute it perfectly. The Devourers expect this. Their ships automatically adjust to counter the most logical tactics. Steve laughed bitterly. So what are we supposed to do? Fight them. Illogically? Maybe, Patricia said seriously. In our last battle, when our plasma weapons failed, we switched to kinetic projectiles. When those did not work, we used nuclear weapons. When nuclear weapons barely scratched them, Captain Roberts rammed her ship into their vessel while detonating the antimatter core. That was desperation, not strategy, Amy pointed out. But it worked, Patricia countered. Roberts destroyed a Devourer ship that had already defeated 3 Council fleets. She did it by doing something completely unpredictable. Tony pulled up more battle data. Look at this. Every time we fight them, we try something different. We use debris as weapons, fly in random patterns that confuse their targeting systems, coordinate attacks through methods that look chaotic but somehow work. Jake studied the information carefully. Humans had been fighting the Devourers for 3 months now, and while they were losing ships and people, they were also achieving something no other species had managed. They were actually winning some battles. The Council still thinks we are. Just lucky, Amy said, reading through diplomatic messages. They keep asking us to share our combat data so their experts can develop proper strategies. And what do we tell them? Jake asked. That we do not have proper strategies, Steve answered. With a grin. We just make it up as we go along. Dr. Lewis nodded thoughtfully. That might be exactly why we are surviving. The Devourers cannot adapt to chaos, because chaos has no pattern to predict. A new alert sounded throughout the ship. Amy quickly checked her communications board. We are receiving a distress call from the Altair system. Devourer ships have been detected moving toward the planet. Jake looked around the room at his officers. 3 months ago, they had been a diplomatic mission that no one in the galaxy took seriously. Now they were possibly the only force that could stand against an enemy that was consuming entire star systems. How long until we can reach Altair? He asked Tony. 6 hours at maximum speed. Then we better get moving, Jake decided. Send a message to all human ships in the area. Tell them we have another impossible battle to fight. As the Defender and its escort ships jumped toward Altair, Jake wondered if they were heading toward their deaths, or toward the moment when the galaxy would finally realize that humanity was not a joke after all. The species that everyone thought was too primitive to matter was about to prove that sometimes the best way to fight the impossible was to ignore the rules entirely. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in their recorded history. For the first time in thousands of years, the great civilizations of the galaxy were afraid. Admiral Carl Brooks stood in the center of the council chamber. Surrounded by representatives from species that had spent centuries treating humanity like amusing pets, Council Representative Veltar of the Zephyrians floated above his crystalline platform, his energy form flickering with what humans had learned to recognize as distress. The Devourers have consumed 47 star systems in the past month, he announced to the assembled delegates. Our combined fleets have failed to stop even a single incursion. The Vordic representative, a being that looked like living crystal, spoke in perfectly logical tones. Analysis indicates total galactic consumption within 2.7 standard years if current Devourer expansion rates continue. Recommendation: immediate deployment of all available military assets under unified command. Structure: Carl listened to their panicked discussions with growing disgust. These were the same beings who had rejected every human proposal for cooperation, who had treated Earth like a backward colony unworthy of consideration. Now they wanted humanity to die for them. We propose that human forces serve as advance scouts and defensive screens, announced the Krillian war chief, his insect-like mandibles clicking as he spoke. Your species shows unexpected resilience against Devourer forces. This resilience can buy time for superior civilizations to develop effective countermeasures. Carl stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. In other words, you want us to die while you figure out how to save yourselves. The Nereid ambassador, speaking through a water-filled communication tank, bubbled softly. Humanity has shown courage in recent engagements. We honor this sacrifice and will ensure your species is remembered after the crisis passes. How generous, Carl replied with cold sarcasm. But I have a better idea. Humanity declines your offer. Shocked silence filled the chamber. Veltar's energy form flared brighter. You refuse to defend galactic civilization. We refuse to serve. As cannon fodder under your command, Carl clarified. Humanity will fight the Devourers our way, using our methods, without council oversight or interference. The Vordic representative processed this information with visible confusion. This approach lacks logic. Human technology is inferior to council standards. Human tactics violate established military doctrine. Probability of success, negligible. Carl smiled grimly. Maybe that is exactly why we might succeed. 3 days later, Captain Helen Carter stood on the bridge of the human cruiser Liberty, watching Devourer ships approach the Kepler colony. Her fleet consisted of converted cargo haulers, outdated military vessels, and experimental craft that other species would consider flying coffins. But these ships and their crews had something the advanced civilizations lacked: the willingness to try anything. Enemy ships are forming their standard attack pattern, reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Ben Murphy. Looks like they expect us to respond with conventional defensive measures. Helen grinned. Then let us disappoint them. All ships execute Plan Chaos. What followed would be studied in military academies for generations. Human ships scattered in seemingly random directions, using flight patterns based on migratory bird flocks, schooling fish, and swarm intelligence. They turned space debris into improvised weapons, deployed decoy signals that mimicked everything from asteroid fields to black holes, and coordinated their attacks through a combination of military radio chatter and old Earth music. Commander Ryan Foster led a squadron of fighters in an attack that defied every principle of space combat. His ships used their waste disposal systems to create an electromagnetic pulse that temporarily disabled Devourer shields, then followed up with an assault using mining explosives, construction tools, and weapons designed for hunting space pirates. Rather than fighting cosmic horrors, the Devourers, whose technology had evolved to counter millions of years of logical warfare, found themselves facing something completely unprecedented. Their adaptive systems tried to predict human tactics, but failed because human tactics made no sense according to conventional military wisdom. Dr. Nancy Kim watched the battle from the colony's defense center, taking notes on everything she observed. As the head of humanity's new weapons development program, she was learning that human creativity was more powerful than any advanced technology. Look at that, she said to her assistant, pointing at the tactical display. Foster's squadron just used a garbage scow to ram a Devourer battleship. The explosion created a chain reaction that took out 3 more enemy vessels. Her assistant, Dr. Peter Chong, shook his head in amazement. The council experts said ramming attacks were suicide tactics with no strategic value. The council experts never fought an enemy that could not predict suicide tactics, Nancy replied. We are not just fighting with our ships and weapons. We are fighting with human nature itself. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it ended, the Kepler colony was safe and an entire Devourer fleet had been destroyed. The cost was heavy. Humanity lost 37 ships and over 2,000 crew members, but they had achieved something that great civilizations thought impossible. They had won a major victory against the Devourers. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. For the first time since the Devourer threat began, there was hope. The primitive humans, the species everyone had dismissed as cosmic jokes, had found a way to fight back. Council Representative Veltar sent an urgent message to Earth Command. We request immediate sharing of human tactical data and integration of human forces under proper military command. Carl Brooks read the message and laughed. Send them our reply, he told Amy Patterson, who is now serving as his communications chief. Tell them that human forces will continue operating independently. We will defend any system that requests our aid, but we will not serve under alien command or share our methods with civilizations that spend centuries treating us like children. The message sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. For the first time in galactic history, a junior species was dictating terms to their supposed superiors. But as more reports came in of human victories against impossible odds, the Council began to realize uncomfortable truth. They needed humanity, far more than humanity needed them. General Marcus Davis stood before the assembled leaders of Earth's military council, reading reports that 6 months ago would have seemed like science fiction. Human fleets were winning battles across the galaxy, protecting systems that the great civilizations had abandoned as lost causes. But instead of gratitude, the Galactic Council was demanding explanations and control. They want our tactical data, he announced to the room full of officers. The Zephyrians claim our methods violate basic principles of warfare. The Vortics insist our success rate is statistically impossible and must be due to luck rather than skill. Admiral Carl Brooks leaned back in his chair with amusement. Let me guess. They want us to submit to proper military leadership so they can teach us how to fight correctly. Exactly, Marcus confirmed. Council Military Command has issued a formal order requiring all human forces to integrate with their existing command structure. They say our chaotic methods are dangerous and need to be controlled by experienced strategists. Captain Roy Tucker, recently returned from the defense of Altair Prime, snorted with disgust. Experienced at losing, maybe? I had 3 different council species taking refuge behind my fleet at Altair because their own forces could not handle a single Devourer squadron. The Battle of Altair Prime had become legendary throughout the galaxy. Roy's small fleet had faced a massive Devourer armada while protecting refugee ships from 3 different civilizations. Using tactics based on ancient Earth military strategies, street fighting techniques, and pure human stubbornness, his forces had destroyed the entire enemy fleet while suffering only minor losses. Dr. Kevin Wright, the fleet's new chief science officer, pulled up holographic displays showing Devourer technology analysis. I have been studying the wreckage from our recent victories, he said. The Devourer's adaptive systems are incredibly sophisticated. They can counter any logical strategy within minutes of first contact. But they cannot counter illogical strategies, observed Captain Helen Carter, who had joined the meeting via communication link from her ship. Every time we do something that makes no sense according to military doctrine, their systems fail to adapt properly. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. The question is whether we can maintain our advantage. The Council is threatening to cut off supplies and support if we do not submit to their authority. Carl laughed. What supplies? What support? They have been treating us like unwanted relatives for 3 centuries. Now they want to take credit for our success and control our operations. A priority alert interrupted the meeting. Captain Sandra Mitchell's voice came through the communication system, crackling with static from her position near the Vortic homeworld. General Davis, we have a situation here. The Vortic High Command is requesting immediate assistance. There. Homeworld is under attack by the largest Devourer fleet we have seen so far. Marcus leaned forward. How large? Over 300 ships, sir. The Vortics deployed their entire military to stop them. The enemy cut through their defenses like they were not even there. The room fell silent. 300 devourer ships was more than any human force had ever faced. The Vortic homeworld housed billions of crystalline beings who had been traveling between stars since before humans learned to make tools. "What are our available forces in that region?" Marcus asked. "Sandra's. Squadron plus maybe 40 ships from other human fleets," Carl replied after checking his datapad. "Against 300 devourer vessels and their support craft." Roy Tucker stood up. "Request permission to take my ships to assist, sir." "That would be suicide," pointed out Dr. Wright. "The odds are impossible." "The odds have been impossible since this war started," Roy replied. "But we keep winning anyway." Marcus made the decision that would define humanity's role in galactic history. "All available human forces, proceed to Vortic space immediately. We are not abandoning allies, no matter what the odds." 3 days later, Sandra Mitchell found herself commanding the most diverse fleet in galactic history. Human ships formed the core of the force, but they were joined by vessels from species that had never worked together before. Zephyrian energy ships, Krillian insect fighters, Nereid watercraft, and even some experimental Vortic vessels flew under human tactical command. "This is unprecedented," reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Jake Peters. "We have representatives from 15 different species requesting permission to follow human battle plans." Sandra studied the tactical situation. The Devourer fleet had surrounded the Vortic homeworld and was beginning the process of planetary consumption. Their ships moved in perfect geometric formations, following patterns that had proven successful against logical military responses for millions of years. "All ships, this is Admiral Mitchell," she announced, using the rank that alien commanders had spontaneously assigned to her. "We are going to hit them with something they have never seen before. Human doctrine mixed with every crazy idea our allies can contribute." What followed was the most chaotic battle in recorded galactic history. Human ships used the Vortic homeworld's crystal formations to hide their approach, emerging from behind geometric structures at impossible angles. Zephyrian energy beings projected false fleet positions, while Krillian fighters attacked in swarm patterns based on insect behavior. Nereid vessels created water-based interference that confused devourer sensors. Sandra's flagship led an assault that combined elements from human music, mathematical equations, dance patterns, and what her tactical officer described as organized madness. When the Devourers tried to adapt to human chaos, they found themselves facing Zephyrian logic. When they adjusted for energy-based attacks, Krillian projectile weapons struck from unexpected directions. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Vortic homeworld was safe, and over 200 Devourer ships had been destroyed or disabled. The cost was significant. Humanity lost 23 ships, and their allies lost 41. But they had achieved something unprecedented, a combined fleet victory using human tactical doctrine. The aftermath of the battle changed everything. Video recordings of crystalline Vortic beings cheering for their human liberators spread across the galaxy. Council representatives, who had spent centuries dismissing humanity as primitive, found themselves studying human culture, trying to understand how a species they considered backward had developed the most effective military doctrine in known history. Marcus Davis received a communication from the Council later that day. For the first time in galactic history, they were not making demands or issuing orders. They were making a request. Would humanity consider sharing their knowledge and perhaps training other species in human-style warfare? The galaxy needed teachers, and the only species qualified to provide that education was the one they had treated as students for 300 years. Vice Admiral Paul Garcia stood on the bridge of the massive command ship Harmony, watching the largest combined fleet in galactic history prepare for battle. 6 months ago, no alien species would have accepted human leadership in anything more. important than cleaning duties. Now representatives from 47 different civilizations waited for his orders. "Admiral, we are receiving final position reports from all task forces," announced Commander Lisa Park, his new communications. "Chief, the fleet is ready for your command." Paul studied the tactical display showing 2,847 ships from across the galaxy. This was not just a military force. It was a symbol of how completely the war had changed galactic politics. Species that had fought each other for centuries now worked together under human command. Because humans had proven something impossible, they could beat the Devourers. The target was the Veil Nebula, where Devourer forces had established their largest staging area. Intelligence reports suggested over 500 enemy ships were using the nebula's natural concealment to launch attacks across 3 sectors. No traditional military force could assault such a position successfully. Captain Julia Roberts, commanding. The Advanced Strike Force contacted Paul from her position near the nebula's edge. "Admiral, we are in position. The nebula's electromagnetic interference is even stronger than our projections suggested. Perfect for what we have planned." Paul smiled. Julia had developed the battle plan during a late-night strategy session that included human officers, Zephyrian energy tacticians, Vortic mathematical analysts, and a Krillian swarm coordinator. The result was something that violated every principle of space warfare, while somehow making perfect sense. "All ships, commence." "Operation Impossible," Paul ordered. What happened next would be studied by military historians for generations. The human fleet did not charge directly at the enemy or attempt to establish orbital superiority. Instead, they disappeared into the nebula, using a 3-dimensional maze of false signals, holographic projections, and coordinated movements that resembled an elaborate dance more than a military maneuver. Dr. Alan Cooper's research team had spent weeks preparing for this moment. Their new technology projected human thought patterns directly into space, creating electromagnetic signatures that confused Devourer sensors. The enemy ships, expecting logical attack patterns, found themselves tracking targets that behaved like human emotions made visible. "Devourer forces are showing confusion," reported the tactical officer, Lieutenant Roy Kim. "Their formation is breaking down as they try to respond to multiple false contacts." Julia's strike force emerged from the nebula's core, attacking the enemy staging area from angles that should have been impossible. Her ships moved like water flowing uphill, using the nebula's natural properties to mask their approach while projecting false fleet positions in 12 different directions. Devourers had never encountered anything like this. They're adaptive technology, designed to counter millions of years of logical warfare, simply could not process the sheer chaos of human tactics combined with alien ingenuity. When they adjusted for human unpredictability, Zephyrian energy weapons struck from impossible directions. When they adapted to energy attacks, Vortic mathematical precision caught them in carefully calculated traps. Commander Frank Johnson led the assault on the Devourer's command structure, a massive construct that had been consuming stellar matter for weeks. His attack plan was based on extreme sports, street fighting, and guerrilla warfare tactics that made military theorists throughout the galaxy question their fundamental assumptions about combat. "Target their processing centers with everything we have," Frank ordered his mixed squadron of human, Krillian, and Nereid vessels. "Remember, we are not trying to destroy them cleanly. We want to create as much chaos as possible." The assault succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. Frank's forces destroyed a facility that 3 separate council civilizations had declared impossible to attack. But more importantly, they did it using tactics that the galaxy's military academies would spend decades trying to understand. Paul watched the battle unfold with growing amazement. 18 months ago, humanity had been A galactic joke dismissed as primitive creatures who got lucky finding space travel. Now human flags flew alongside alien banners on command ships throughout the galaxy, and species that had mastered interstellar travel before humans discovered fire were eagerly studying human military doctrine. "Admiral, we are receiving surrender. Signals from the remaining Devourer forces," announced Lisa. "It appears they are attempting to withdraw from the nebula." "Let them go," Paul decided, "but track their movements. We want to know where they are retreating to." The Battle of the Veil Nebula was humanity's greatest triumph. Over 300 Devourer ships had been destroyed or disabled, while the combined galactic fleet lost only 89 vessels. More importantly, the victory proved that the tide of war had turned permanently in favor of the galaxy's defenders. In the aftermath of the battle, Paul received communications from across known space. The Zephyrian High Council requested human advisors to help restructure their military doctrine. The Vortic Collective wanted to establish joint research programs combining mathematical precision with human creativity. Even the proud Krillians asked for human officers to help train their swarm fighters in chaotic tactics. The most significant message came from Earth Command. President Maria Gonzalez herself contacted Paul to inform him that the Galactic Council had passed an unprecedented resolution. Humanity was being offered not just full membership, but leadership positions in the new Galactic Defense Force. "They want us to teach the galaxy how to fight like humans," she explained during their conversation. "Species that would not even acknowledge our existence 2 years ago are now competing for our attention and alliance." Paul looked out at his fleet, watching human ships work alongside vessels from dozens of different civilizations. The transformation was complete. Humanity had gone from galactic joke to galactic protector in less than 2 years. But the real victory was not military. It was the proof that sometimes the best solution to an impossible problem was to ignore the rules entirely. "Set course for Earth," he ordered Lisa. "It is time to go home and plan for the future we never thought we would have." President Maria Gonzalez stood at the podium in the Great Assembly Hall of Earth's new orbital headquarters, looking out at representatives from every major civilization in the galaxy. 2 years ago, these same beings had dismissed humanity as a cosmic joke unworthy of consideration. Today, they competed for human attention, alliance, and protection. "The war against the Devourers is over," she announced to the assembled delegates. "The ancient threat has been pushed back beyond the galactic rim, and our combined forces maintain constant patrols to ensure they never return." The applause that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Zephyrian energy beings flared. Brighter, Vortic crystals chimed in mathematical harmony. Krillian mandibles clicked in approval, and Nereid water speakers bubbled with joy. All of them were celebrating a victory that would have been impossible without human leadership. Admiral Rebecca Torres, now commanding the Galactic Defense Force, presented the final battle reports to the Assembly. Devourer forces had been completely eliminated from 17 sectors and pushed back from 31 others. Their main fleets are retreating toward dark space between galaxies, and our deep patrol units report no signs of renewed activity. Transformation of galactic politics had been swift and complete. Trade agreements that Earth had tried unsuccessfully to negotiate for centuries were now signed eagerly by civilizations desperate to maintain good relations with humanity. Technology sharing, cultural exchange, and joint research projects flourished as species that once considered humans primitive competed to offer their knowledge and resources. Dr. Christopher Lee, now head of interspecies studies, had just published his landmark work studying the war's impact on galactic civilization. The Chaos Advantage, How Human Unpredictability Saved the Galaxy, had become required reading in military academies and universities across known space. "The most interesting discovery," he explained to the Assembly, "is that humanity's greatest Strength was never our technology or our military might. It was our refusal to be limited by conventional thinking. While other species sought optimal solutions, humans embraced creative chaos. Captain Nathan Price commanded the Deep Space Patrol, human fleets that ventured beyond known space to ensure the Devourers never returned. His ships carried crews from dozens of species, all trained in human tactical methods, all ready to face the unknown with the same chaotic creativity that had saved civilization. We maintained 67 patrol routes along the galactic rim. He reported, each fleet includes human officers working alongside alien specialists, combining our tactical flexibility with their technological expertise. The success of these mixed crews had surprised even human commanders. Zephyrian energy beings learned to embrace emotional decision-making, while humans learned to appreciate the value of mathematical precision. Vortic crystal entities discovered the power of intuitive leaps, while humans gained new respect for logical analysis. The result was a fusion of approaches that made every fleet more effective than any single-species force. Maria smiled as she watched the assembly. The transformation extended far beyond military cooperation. Human art, music, literature, and philosophy had become subjects of intense academic study throughout the galaxy. Universities that once dismissed Earth culture as primitive now offered advanced degrees in human creativity theory. The Zephyrian Academy of Pure Thought had established an entire department dedicated to studying human emotional responses. The Vortic Institute of Logic had created new mathematical models based on human problem-solving methods. Even the warrior-focused Krillians had begun incorporating human strategic concepts into their military training. The war taught us something important, Maria continued in her address. Diversity of thought is not a weakness to be corrected, but a strength to be celebrated. The galaxy is safer because we learn to value different approaches to solving problems. Admiral Torres stepped forward to present the final ceremonial element of the day. By unanimous vote of the Galactic Council, humanity is awarded permanent leadership of the Galactic Defense Force and protective authority over all member systems. The vote had been unprecedented in galactic history. For the first time, a younger species had been granted authority over civilizations that had been traveling between stars for millennia. But the logic was undeniable. Humans had saved the galaxy, using methods that no other species could have developed. Captain Julia Roberts, hero of countless battles against the Devourers, now served as training director for the new combined academies. Her programs taught officers from across the galaxy to think like humans while maintaining their own species' advantages. We do not try to make everyone human, she explained to the assembly. We teach them to embrace the chaos that lives inside. Creative thinking. A Zephyrian who learns human tactical flexibility becomes twice as effective. A Vortic who combines logic with intuition becomes unstoppable. The ceremony concluded with the raising of a new flag above the orbital station, Earth's banner alongside symbols from every member civilization. Representing the new galactic order were humanity's greatest gift to the universe. The courage to try the impossible ensured that no threat would ever again catch the galaxy unprepared dot as the delegates dispersed to their ships and their homeworlds. Maria remained at the observation deck, watching the traffic flow around Earth's orbital facilities. Thousands of ships from dozens of species moved through space lanes that had become the busiest trade routes in galactic history. Dr. Lee joined her at the window, carrying a data pad filled with requests from universities across the galaxy. 17 more institutions want to establish human studies programs, he reported. The University of Zephyr wants to know if we can teach a course on human military history. The Vortic Collective is requesting access to our archives of creative literature. Maria laughed softly. 2 years ago, they thought we were smart animals who got lucky. Now they want to learn everything about us. The universe has a sense of humor, Christopher agreed. A species that was everyone's joke ended up writing the rules by which the galaxy survives. In the distance, a fleet of mixed vessels prepared to depart for the outer rim, carrying crews trained in human methods to stand guard against threats not yet imagined. The transformation was complete. Humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history by becoming the dominant civilization not through conquest or technological superiority, but by proving that sometimes the best solution to a non-impossible problem was to ignore the rules entirely. The final image would be remembered forever. Children from across the galaxy learning human history in schools, studying the tactics that saved their worlds, and preparing for a future where humanity's greatest gift to the universe ensured that courage, creativity, and the willingness to try the impossible would always triumph over fear.